The courtroom fell silent as the judge's gavel cracked like thunder. "All charges against Matthias are dismissed," she announced, her voice steady and final. Every transaction was transparent and consensual. Matthias sat motionless in the defendant's chair, his tailored navy suit suddenly feeling too tight against his chest. His heart hammered so loudly he was sure the entire room could hear it. Across the aisle, Aiden's hazel eyes locked onto his, wide with something that looked like regret mixed with relief. And in that single glance Matthias understood the nightmare was far from over. The man he had loved for 5 years, the man who had filed the lawsuit in the first place, was now staring at him as if the world had cracked open between them. 5 years earlier, life had felt simple and bright in downtown Seattle. Matthias had been 31, a rising financial advisor at a boutique firm near Pike Place Market, known for his calm precision and honest advice. He first noticed Aiden on a rainy Tuesday morning at the corner cafe where the baristas knew everyone's order by heart. Aiden was sketching on a napkin, light brown hair falling into his eyes, fingers stained with charcoal from the night before. When their eyes met over the espresso machine, Matthias felt a pull he couldn't explain. "You always draw when you're stressed?" he asked, sliding into the seat across from him without waiting for permission. Aiden laughed, a warm sound that cut through the rain outside. "Only when the world feels too loud." That was the beginning. Within months, they were inseparable. Aiden was 28, an independent graphic designer who had just launched his own studio after years of freelance gigs. He was passionate, impulsive, and full of big dreams that sometimes outran his bank account. Matthias loved that fire. He helped organize Aiden's invoices, set up a simple investment portfolio, and taught him how to track expenses without making it feel like control. "I'm not managing you," Matthias would say softly at night, their bodies tangled under the duvet in their Capitol Hill apartment. "I'm just making sure the dreams don't swallow you whole." Aiden would kiss him then, whispering, "I know. That's why I trust you with everything." They built a life together that looked enviable from the outside. Weekend hikes in the Cascades, quiet dinners with Aiden's sister who lived across the lake, and quiet evenings where Matthias cooked while Aiden played soft indie music on the speaker. When Aiden landed his first major client, a tech startup that needed branding for a national launch, Matthias quietly moved money from his own savings into a joint account to cover the upfront printing costs. "It's an investment in us," he explained when Aiden protested. "We're partners in every sense." Aiden's eyes had filled with tears. "No one's ever believed in me like this." But belief is fragile when money enters the equation. The first cracks appeared 2 years ago when Aiden's parents, conservative retirees in suburban Portland, learned their son was serious about another man. They never said the word disown. But the visits grew colder, the phone calls shorter. Then Aiden's father was diagnosed with early-stage Parkinson's, and medical bills started piling up. Aiden insisted on helping, even though his studio was still finding its feet. Matthias offered to co-sign a small loan, but Aiden refused. "I need to do this myself," he said, voice tight. Matthias respected the boundary, even when it meant watching Aiden work 18-hour days. The real storm hit last spring. Aiden's biggest client suddenly defaulted on a 6-figure payment, leaving him drowning in vendor debts. In panic, he transferred every cent from their joint investment account into his personal one without telling Matthias. When Matthias noticed the missing funds during a routine check, he asked gently, "Hey, did something happen with the portfolio?" Aiden exploded. "You're always watching the numbers like they're more important than me." The argument escalated until Aiden shouted the words that still echoed in Matthias's nightmares. "Maybe you're the one who's been moving money around all along. Maybe I never should have trusted you with my life." 3 weeks later, the lawsuit papers arrived at the apartment. Aiden's family had convinced him to file, claiming Matthias had manipulated joint assets for personal gain. The media in Seattle's tight-knit business circles picked it up fast. Local couples' ugly split turns financial. Friends chose sides. Matthias's boss suggested he take leave. And Aiden moved out to his sister's place in Ballard without a single goodbye note. Now, Standing in the aftermath of the verdict, Matthias felt the weight of every shared memory pressing down. The judge had cleared him completely, every transfer documented, every signature voluntary, every decision made with full disclosure. But innocence on paper didn't heal the wound in Aiden's eyes. As the courtroom emptied, Matthias rose slowly, legs unsteady. Aiden took one hesitant step forward, then stopped. The air between them felt thicker than the courtroom silence. Matthias realized the real trial wasn't about money at all. It was about whether love could survive the moment when trust shattered into 1,000 pieces. Outside the King County Courthouse, Seattle's spring rain had given way to a rare patch of sunlight that painted the sidewalks gold. Matthias stepped into the light first, loosening his tie as if it had been choking him for months. Reporters hovered at the bottom of the steps, but his lawyer waved them off with a curt, "No comment." He scanned the crowd until he found Aiden standing alone near a row of cherry blossoms just beginning to bloom. Their eyes met again, and this time Aiden didn't look away. Instead, he walked over, hands shoved deep in his coat pockets like a kid caught stealing cookies. "I'm sorry," Aiden said, voice barely above the traffic noise. The words hung there, simple and devastating. Matthias wanted to laugh and cry at the same time. Sorry didn't erase the months of legal fees, the sleepless nights, or the way their mutual friends had stopped inviting them both to parties. But it was a start. "We need to talk," Matthias replied, keeping his tone even. "Not here. Not with everyone watching." They ended up at the same cafe where they had first met, now almost empty in the late afternoon. The barista recognized them and quietly slid 2 Americanos across the counter without being asked. Sitting across from each other again felt surreal. Aiden stirred sugar into his cup even though he never took it sweet. "My dad kept calling every day," he explained, eyes fixed on the swirling liquid. "He said if I didn't protect myself, you'd leave me with nothing when things went south. He kept quoting articles about gay couples and money fights. I was scared, Matt. The client defaulted. The bills were crushing me. And suddenly every number looked like a red flag." Matthias listened without interrupting the way he always had. Inside, though, anger and hurt twisted together like barbed wire. He had never once hidden a transaction. Every investment decision carried both their names. Yet doubt had crept in anyway. That night they didn't go home together. Aiden returned to his sister's guest room, and Matthias drove back to his empty apartment. The silence there felt accusing. He opened the file cabinet where they kept every receipt, every contract, every email thread. Page after page proved his innocence, but proof couldn't rewrite history. He remembered the night Aiden had come home drunk after his father's diagnosis, crying about feeling like a failure. Matthias had held him and quietly transferred $10,000 into Aiden's studio, account labeled Family Emergency Fund. He never told anyone, not even Aiden at first, because love wasn't supposed to keep score. The next morning brought the first real conversation in months. Aiden showed up at the apartment with coffee and a folder of his own. Inside were printouts of every argument they'd had about money, annotated in his messy handwriting. "I see it now," he said, voice cracking. "I projected my fear onto you. My family kept saying you were too good at numbers, that it was suspicious. But I was the one who moved the joint funds without asking. I was the one who listened to them instead of us." Matthias felt something crack open inside his chest. Forgiveness wasn't instant, but it was possible. They spent the entire day talking, not yelling but truly talking, about the pressures they had both carried silently. Aiden's fear of being seen as the kept man, Matthias's fear of being painted as the controlling partner. Society's quiet judgment on 2 men building a life together had seeped into their foundation like water damage. By evening, they were sitting on the living room floor surrounded by old photos. Aiden picked up one from their first anniversary trip to Vancouver, both of them laughing on a ferry. "I want to earn your trust back," he whispered. Matthias reached for his hand. "It's not about earning. It's about choosing each other again every day." They didn't kiss that night, Some wounds needed time to close. But when Aiden left for his sister's place, he promised to come back the next day. For the first time in months, Matthias slept without the courtroom nightmare replaying behind his eyelids. The media storm didn't die with the verdict. Seattle's Alternative Weekly ran a follow-up piece titled, Love or Ledger? Local gay couples courtroom drama. Comments sections filled with speculation. Some called Aiden naive, others painted Matthias as a master manipulator who had simply gotten away with it. Their friends split into camps. Matthias's best friend from college stopped returning calls. Aiden's sister, who had initially supported the lawsuit, now texted daily apologies. The pressure from outside only magnified the pressure inside. Matthias returned to work on Monday, but every client meeting felt different. People glanced at him sideways, as if wondering whether their portfolios were safe. He caught whispers in the break room. He was cleared, but still the isolation stung more than the accusations ever had. At night, he jogged the streets of Capitol Hill until his lungs burned, trying to outrun the doubt that still lingered in his own mind. Had he been too involved in Aiden's finances? Had love blinded him to the power imbalance? Aiden, meanwhile, was rebuilding his studio from the ground up. He took on smaller local clients, worked from coffee shops to save on rent, and attended weekly therapy sessions his sister had found. The counselor says I have abandonment issues from my dad's illness, he admitted during one of their careful dinners. I pushed you away because I was terrified you'd leave first. Matthias listened, really listened, and for the first time saw the scared boy beneath the talented artist. He shared his own story then, the childhood in a small Oregon town where his parents never accepted his sexuality, the way he had learned to control every variable because feelings couldn't be budgeted. Vulnerability felt foreign but necessary. One weekend they drove to the Olympic Peninsula, just the two of them in Matthias's old Subaru. No phones, no lawyers, no family. They hiked to a hidden lake and sat on sun-warmed rocks skipping stones. Aiden spoke first. I almost lost the best thing in my life because I let fear speak louder than love. Matthias tossed a flat stone that skipped 7 times. We both did. But we're still here. That night, in a tiny rented cabin with rain drumming on the tin roof, they held each other without expectation. No grand gestures, just the quiet decision to try again. When Aiden whispered, I love you, it felt like the first time all over again. Back in the city, real life tested them immediately. Aiden's father called, demanding to know why the lawsuit had been dropped. Aiden stood his ground for the first time. Dad, Matthias never stole anything. I was wrong, and I'm fixing it. The silence on the other end stretched long. Matthias watched from the kitchen, proud and heartbroken at once. Later, Aiden curled against him on the couch. I chose us, he said simply. Matthias kissed his temple. That's all I ever wanted. Yet the journey wasn't linear. Old triggers surfaced at unexpected moments. When Aiden received a large payment from a new client, he instinctively asked Matthias to look at the contract before signing. Then he caught himself. I don't want to put that weight on you again. Matthias smiled gently. We can look together. That's what partners do. They were learning a new language, one of shared power instead of silent control. Summer arrived with its long golden evenings, and the couple slowly rebuilt routines that felt both familiar and brand new. They cooked meals together again, argued over which playlist to use, and even attended a pride parade in June where rainbow flags waved like victory banners. Yet beneath the surface, both men carried scars. Matthias noticed he double-checked bank statements more often, a habit born of trauma. Aiden flinched whenever money came up in conversation with friends. They decided to see a couples counselor together, a soft-spoken woman in Fremont who specialized in LGBTQ+ relationships. In sessions, they unpacked layers neither had realized existed. Aiden admitted the lawsuit had been partly about proving to his father that he could stand on his own. Matthias confessed he had sometimes used financial advice as a way to feel needed, a leftover from years of feeling invisible in his own family. The counselor asked them to write letters to each other, unsent at first, detailing the hurt and the gratitude. Reading Aiden's letter aloud one rainy evening, Matthias had to stop twice because his voice broke. "You gave me stability when my world was chaos," Aiden had written. "I repaid you with doubt. I'm so sorry. Work brought new challenges." Aiden's studio finally landed a contract with a major nonprofit for a nationwide awareness campaign. The project required significant upfront investment, and this time he asked Matthias to sit in on the financial planning meeting, not as a controller but as a partner. Watching Aiden confidently present numbers he had learned to understand filled Matthias with quiet pride. Later that night Aiden said, "I don't want to need you for money. I want to choose you every single day." The words settled deep in Matthias's chest like a warm anchor, but external forces still tested them. Aiden's parents announced a surprise visit to Seattle. The dinner was tense at first, filled with careful small talk. Then Aiden's father cleared his throat. "I was wrong about you, Matthias. I let fear cloud my judgment. It wasn't a full apology, but it was progress." Later, walking home under streetlights, Aiden squeezed Matthias's hand. "I think he's starting to see us." Matthias nodded, throat tight. Acceptance from family had always felt like a distant dream. Now it was real, fragile, and worth protecting. They took their first vacation since the trial. A week in Maui, just sun, sand, and silence. One evening they sat on the beach watching the sunset paint the sky in impossible colors. Aiden turned to him, eyes shining. "Marry me, not because of money or security, because I can't imagine building any future without you in it." Matthias's answer came without hesitation. Yes. The proposal wasn't dramatic. No ring yet, no crowd. But it was honest, and that made it perfect. Fall brought cooler air and deeper conversations. They started planning a small wedding for next spring, something intimate with close friends and chosen family. Planning forced them to discuss finances openly again, but this time the conversations felt collaborative rather than charged. They opened a new joint account labeled Future and set clear rules. Every major decision required both signatures and full transparency. It wasn't about control. It was about trust rebuilt brick by brick. Yet one last shadow lingered. An old friend of Aiden's from college reached out, claiming he had proof that Matthias had once moved money without consent during the early days of their relationship. The accusation was false. Aiden had forgotten about a legitimate transfer they had discussed, but it reopened old wounds. Instead of panicking, they faced it together. They gathered every email, every text, every bank record and sat down at the kitchen table until midnight. When the friend was confronted with the evidence, he backed down, mumbling an apology. The incident taught them both that doubt could resurface, but they no longer had to face it alone. Matthias began volunteering at a local LGBTQ+ financial literacy program, teaching young queer couples how to build healthy money habits. Aiden designed the program's logo and marketing materials for free. Watching their skills complement each other without power struggles felt like healing in real time. One participant, a nervous 22-year-old, asked them after a session, "How did you survive something so public and painful?" Aiden answered first. "We stopped trying to prove who was right and started remembering why we chose each other." Matthias added quietly, "And we chose again every single day." As winter approached, they sold the old apartment and bought a small house in Wallingford with a backyard big enough for a dog they planned to adopt. Moving boxes filled with shared memories felt like closing one chapter and opening another. On their last night in the old place, they slow danced in the empty living room to the same indie song that had played on their first date. Aiden rested his head on Matthias's shoulder. "Thank you for believing in us when I couldn't." Matthias kissed his hair. "Thank you for fighting to come back." The wedding took place on a crisp April afternoon in a small garden overlooking Puget Sound. Cherry blossoms drifted like confetti as Matthias and Aiden exchanged vows they had written themselves. "I promise to choose transparency over fear," Aiden said, voice steady. "I promise to choose partnership over protection," Matthias replied. Their families watched, some with tears, all with quiet acceptance. When they kissed, The applause felt like the final gavel of a different kind of court, one that ruled in favor of love. Months later, life settled into a rhythm both peaceful and alive. Aiden's studio thrived, now employing 2 assistants. Matthias was promoted to partner at his firm, specializing in helping same-sex couples navigate finances without the shadows of old stereotypes. They adopted a rescue mutt named Ledger, a private joke that made them laugh every time. Evenings were filled with cooking, hiking, and quiet talks about the future they were building together. One quiet Sunday morning, sitting on their back porch with coffee, Aiden turned to Matthias. "Do you ever regret staying?" The question carried no accusation, only curiosity. Matthias set his mug down and took Aiden's hand. "Never. Every scar taught us how to love better." They sat in comfortable silence, watching the dog chase falling leaves. The journey had been brutal, beautiful, and entirely theirs. True or false? A relationship can only survive betrayal if both partners pretend the pain never happened.